You know, walk the flight line at AirVenture, inevitably you're going to find an interesting airplane, and that's exactly what we found here with this 2/3 scale P-38 Lightning. William Presley at Volar Avionics is going to tell us all about this interesting airplane.
William Presley, and I'm with Volar Avionics out of Nashville area, and I'm standing in front of a P-38. I'm standing in front of, more specifically, the dream of my great uncle Jimmy. And I just couldn't be more proud than to have it here for the first time at AirVenture 2024. So this is a 2/3 scale P-38. It's now Volar's Lightning, and it's something that my uncle dreamed about and thought about since, well, he built his first one when he was 14 out of balsa wood. And there's a whole story, and you can learn more about it. There's 160 build pics and all sorts of information on our website, flyvolar.com. But the short version of this story is that he was infatuated and in love with this aircraft, as many Americans were. The fork-tailed devil, as the Germans called it. It's a beautiful bird, but as someone once said, aircrafts are not about weapons of war. They're not about making money. The airplanes are a beautiful dream, and this was Jimmy O'Hara's beautiful dream. So let's be clear, like, this is not a kit-built plane. You know, he designed every single thing in this aircraft. He designed it down to the decimal point on the mean aerodynamic chord to match a 2/3 scale P-38 Lightning. And he originally built it to use experimental engines from Tigra, and power plant forward it was going to be experimental too. He had the engine cowlings built for it. He had everything done for the Tigra engines with 2-blade props. And the truth is, it just didn't have enough power to get this thing up and going the way it needed to. So it was back to the drawing board, and several years later, with new engine cowlings, moving the hydraulic systems from the nose to the right tail boom, and waiting to finally get these TSIO 360 Continentals that you see in here. They're TSIO 360 RBs, just like off a Seneca 5. And at full 38 inches of manifold pressure, they're supposed to do about 220 horsepower a side. I probably only had it to about 180 because I've been taking off about 34 inches of manifold pressure. Weighs about 2,800 pounds. I'm about $160, 165, and full fuel we're about 3,200 pounds. This plane flew with my Aunt Mitzi and Uncle Jim. They flew about 50 or 60 hours together. She sat right back in there where her name is now engraved on the leather seats we put in for her. And they got, let's just put it this way, he said his goal, his aspirations were it would probably take him 25 years to finish this, and if he was lucky, he'd get to fly it. So he was a very lucky man indeed. Now, everybody wants to ask, and I understand why, everybody wants to ask about what engines does it have, or this, that, or the other. What I want to know is, how did somebody design Fowler flaps that work with a simple mechanical mechanism in 4 different places simultaneously with a simple movement of a lever 180 degrees? You go from flaps full down, as you see here, to mid, and the next 180 is 5 degrees, and the next 180 is flaps full up. It is precise, it's perfect, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's a stunning piece of engineering. I hope I don't sound, I'm sure I'm biased because of the sentiment that I have, but it is not an overstatement to say that I'm standing to the side of a work of staggering genius. To have someone who could be at this level of engineering. He was a rocket scientist, a professor of aeronautical engineering. He was an A&P. He was so many different things, but he was also a craftsman. The work that he performed is just second to none. All right, so Volar Avionics and Restoration is all about you know, getting things the way that people want. And in this case, we wanted to have something that would make a real tribute to Jim and Mitzi and be cool and retro for a P-38, because you know, it's just a special airplane. So first of all, it's a Garmin panel with 4 275s. 2 of them are engine instruments, and then you've got an attitude indicator and an HSI instrument, full backup on there. This actually is an IFR aircraft. Got a navigator in there, as well as a radio system. One radio that also provides intercom, although I never planned to have a passenger in here. My Aunt Mitzi rode back there, and then they did have an intercom, and she actually worked the radios and navigated for Jim. Now, of course, Garmin will do that for us. Isn't that something? Now look down below and you'll see where we did a little engraving on the hatch. Look at the very bottom of the floorboard. Did some engraving there with the High Flight poem, which was part of a story that I wrote, which the poem obviously is a part of all of our history as aviators, but it was a part of a poem that I wrote for Uncle Jim, or a story that I wrote about Uncle Jim when he passed. We did a custom, you know, set of panels and switches and such to complement things. Very unusual hydraulic system in here. It's actually from a Blanca, the hydraulics are, but with some modifications that Uncle Jim put in, which are really unique, including that down lever, which holds the down pressure. We put in leather seats, and with Jim's name engraved in the front one and Mitzi in the back. We tried to keep things simplistic and Spartan, you know, in that typical Army Air Corps sort of look, but still make it special. I have no idea about a lot of the ends of the envelope on this plane because I've tried to keep it so straight and narrow. Simply put, this aircraft should, and I believe does, perform like a P-38 in terms of aerodynamic characteristics, albeit with a very different power plant. So what that means is, and if you just look back here for a second, run back to this vertical stabilizer here and just look at the smallness of that vertical stabilizer compared to the overall grandeur of the aircraft. So you really don't have, forget rudder authority, you don't have a lot of vertical stabilization in there anyway. So you actually, even though it's a twin, you still have to be careful or mindful, if you will, on your turns to make sure you've got rudder in there to keep coordinated flight. Secondly, those skinny vertical or small vertical stabilizers and smaller rudders relative to the oversized frame made some characteristics in the P-38 which are rather dangerous. One of them was, don't spin it. Just don't spin it. It's almost impossible to recover from after the first few spins. And you just need to be mindful of a lot of things. This, like the original, like the P-38, it has counter-rotating outboard propellers. I believe it would be very unforgiving for single engine performance. However, when both engines are operating and you're mindful of coordination in your turns, it's a very smooth and forgiving aircraft that shows the masterwork of an aeronautical engineer at their height of their powers. Even though, like, he started this when he was 64, his just intellectual capabilities were so great, and his understanding of aerodynamics. If you just get a chance someday to look at the calculations he did, not that I don't understand, but it's just beautiful. And so it was not only the design, but the craftsmanship that went into it. It flies just like that. Although I certainly wasn't sure about the engines. Now we've done a lot of work on engines and hoses. We replaced so many things, and just almost everything has been replaced to get it safe to get up here. But the airframe itself, it flies like a dream.